Hi, Carrie and Amanda's video today is going to be on background info for Midtroff and Scholl's article, Forming and Updating Object Representations Without Awareness, Evidence for Motion-Induced Blindness. The purpose of this experiment was to determine the role of consciousness in forming and updating object representations using motion-induced blindness. This phenomenon is very handy for this experiment due to the fact that objects fade from conscious awareness for brief periods of time, although they are still actually there. Some facts about motion-induced blindness that are significant to this experiment include the findings that multiple objects tend to come in and out of awareness independently, while if only one object is present, it tends to come in and out of awareness as a unit. So, to determine whether object representations are made with or without consciousness, the objects that disappear during motion-induced blindness can be altered during the brief time that they are not being perceived. Experimenters could then look at if the objects reappear as they were originally grouped, suggesting no update to the brain's object representation, or if the grouping was updated. So, in theory, if an object was split into several pieces while it was not being perceived, and all of the objects reappeared simultaneously, suggesting they were still being treated as one object, this would suggest that object representations require consciousness to be formed. However, if the pieces reappeared independently, suggesting the object representation was updated during the blind period, this would suggest that object representations are formed below the level of consciousness. This experiment used the temporary lack of awareness in motion-induced blindness as a tool to determine whether awareness is required to form and update two types of visual grouping cues. These visual grouping cues are object representations and perceptual grouping. So what are object representations? Well, if you tried to view the world without them, everything would appear to be a meaningless jumble of features that aren't distinct from one another. However, our brains group these features at a certain point in visual processing, forming what we think of as objects. The second type of visual grouping studied in this experiment is perceptual grouping. In brief, perceptual groups are created when objects have symmetry, similarity, proximity, closure, or smoothness.